Attention! The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for the entirety of the National Hockey League. Please stay tuned for further information from the Storm Cellar.
Welcome back to the Storm Cellar. Been a few weeks. It's time to start getting back to the week though, Ray, because hockey season has started. I'm not counting Buffalo getting shellacked overseas at all. Here in the United States, there are actual teams playing, even though the Hurricanes don't play until tomorrow. It's kind of a weird schedule because the NHL, we know, uses a schedule monkey, and that monkey, I think, is getting maybe older and not as quick on his feet as he used to be. Maybe it's arthritis, but the schedule is just not good.
I wondered if they used darts this year instead of the schedule monkey, because it got even wilder here. I don't even know what to say.
Could be. I mean, maybe Monkey's on vacation. Maybe this is replacement Monkey. Maybe this is intern Monkey, right?
Indeed.
They brought in a gibbon, maybe, or a macaque, maybe, who's not used to making the schedule, and he's
Macaques are
just
cute,
not.
But
yeah, I mean, you can't want to increase viewership and then schedule 6 games to start at 7 p.m. Sorry, can't do it.
Yeah,
not how it works. So,
that's
it is, right? So I know you're not feeling super great. So normally I would ask you a bunch of questions. How you doing? You would say, "Oh, I'm pretty good," but it's Calgary, so it's hot or cold, right? Wildfires, maybe snow. I mean, could be
maybe
all
snow.
Of those things.
Yeah, it could be. It's actually pretty nice. Knock on wood. I mean, we've gotten pretty lucky lately here as far as the weather goes. Sadly, illnesses sometimes sweep through the locker room, and this house, it's kind of swept through here and knocked me on my arse here a little bit, and so it's been difficult. I'm anxiously awaiting the start of the season for us. Like you said, having everyone else on the go already. I already heard the Flames fans cheering for their comeback last night. That was kind of unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then the Oilers.
The Cup champ favorites, according to everybody who I think doesn't watch hockey.
They got their butt handed to them.
Meaning ESPN.
Yeah. Crazy. But we still have a job to do, like you said. And that's absolutely correct. And while the season starts tomorrow, we're looking into the future in a really good way. Brad, you invited a guest that's going to help us through to understand our future and realize, hopefully help Caniacs realize, man, the future is looking bright. We got to wear shades.
Absolutely. The future, I mean, this is supposed to be a down year, and it's not even a down year, really. I mean, I think the defense is as strong. Your top 12 forwards, a little shake up there. We need to figure out who's going to score the goals, right? Who's going to play up to their potential. But then you look at next year and you go, oh, that's good. But now this person's going to help us understand. That's just not a next year thing. I think this is an owner listening to hockey people. And this is the anti Dave Tepper situation for our Carolina Panther fans, right?
Right.
This is an owner who says, you tell me how much and you bring in the right people and I'll pay for it. And I'm going to go away now for the most part.
There you go.
So Nick from Canes Prospects is here. Nick, welcome to the show. Very glad to have you. I know we reached out to you guys like a year ago and we just never worked out, but that's how things go sometimes. Like you are a busy man, right?
Yeah, I try to be.
And we've heard you on other podcasts and we're like, oh yeah, we definitely would love to talk to you. And I think now is a good point, right? Because we're just about to play game 1. We do have, quote unquote, a prospect of sorts like on the team. And we just found out kind of where some of our other prospects have ended up. So, but we always start with our guest and their story. So I don't know your whole personal story. A lot of people may not. So, how did you become a Caniac? Why hockey versus other sports? And specifically kind of how did, prospects is to follow prospects and evaluate prospects is not an easy task. It really is like a full-time job. So where did that love come in, right? Of going, hey, like it's great to see these players, but like, oh, watch these guys develop and see them come through the ranks. So hit us with your story, man.
So yeah, my mom moved here from New Jersey, and they were never really a hockey family. My dad lived here all of his life, never really a hockey person. But whenever they got married, they saw the Hurricanes win the Cup in '06, and they just became Hurricanes fans, I guess. From that, they encouraged me to play hockey, which where I grew up is kind of rough because all we had was inline, and I still played it. I still had a great time. I can kind of skate for the most part. Just don't ask on ice; it might not go the best. But I was a goalie for a long time, and that's kind of how I got into it. And then I didn't really get into like Twitter or just any social media, in complete honesty, until I was probably like 16. So oh god, 6 years ago. So 2018, right before the team actually started, performing. And I was really just a reserved person. And then obviously I kept doing what I did. I wrote for Cardiac Cane for like a year. It was fun, and then I just left it. And then now I can do Canes prospects because I had a person in front of me that I'm really good friends with. He's helped me out a lot, and now I talk about prospects for a lot of my time, and it's incredibly fun.
That's awesome. So, excuse me. Very cool story. I wonder if I saw your parents at the 2006 Cup game.
Definitely not.
Oh no,
they don't like to. I mean, it's not that they don't like to go, but for where they live, it's kind of a hassle to go all the way to Raleigh and then come all the way back. And they do love the sport, though. They follow as much as they can. Obviously, it might be a little tougher nowadays just because they don't really have kids in the house anymore because we've all moved out or anything like that, and we were the ones that normally pushed it all. So they still do.
It's tough too when I always joke about people in New England don't understand how big places like North Carolina are, right?
Yeah.
You can be in North Carolina and still be 6 or 7 hours from the game. Like it's not a small state. So, or we have plenty of Caniacs in Virginia and South Carolina as well. So, let's jump into prospects, right? Because for a lot of folks, we concentrate on you, but you're in the business of prospects, and I kind of want to start with. I don't want to say bad. I don't want to make it sound like bad prospects to good prospects, but I want to like prospects that are more questionable, maybe to make the team, and then moving toward people who are more sure things. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. And I really would like to start with Anthony Honka. So this is a kid who I think we all. I mean, Ray and I don't follow prospects the way you do or the way a lot of folks do, right? Like Alex Zahari is always somebody I look at for prospect news, like always a great person to look after. This is a kid who I thought was like, oh, this kid is on his way and it's becoming like it's just a matter of time, right? This kid's going to make the NHL. Maybe it isn't a top 2 guy, but like he's got the skills. And then this year, I think he's played 1 season in the AHL, but this year they've sent him back to Switzerland, which in my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't bode well for his future here because the European game is more open than the North American game. And so generally you want people to have at least some experience in North America, be it AHL or NHL, to kind of get them up to the physicality, the roughness, sometimes smaller ice surfaces. So the fact that they're sending him back to Europe far from the team means he's not coming up this year, right? It's not going to be a call-up or anything. Is this somebody who just has gotten bitten by the depth bug where we've just picked up guys who have just, moved past him in this race to become an NHLer?
So a fun little thing. Honka was the first prospect I ever did a story on. He was having like a historic season, like production wise for his age in Finland. I was like, oh, that's sick. I'm going to write a story about him. That was like one of my proud things, how I got really into prospects. Yeah. For Honka, it's kind of just, he was going to get pushed out in Chicago because obviously the Canes want to have Scott Morrow playing a ton. Obviously, Charles Alexis Legault, who everybody got introduced to when he fought in that national preseason game and the prospect tournament where he was very solid, he's also another guy they probably want to have playing a ton. And then you still have, Lexi Haimo-Salmi, who's coming back finally from Finland, Bryce Montgomery, who was just signed to a contract. Whether I love that kid as well. He a fun little player. I shouldn't say little because he's 6'4", but
which we need more of.
Yeah.
He was just going to get pushed out, and it probably just came to a point where he realized it wasn't going to happen. So he just decided, I'm going to go back to Europe. I'm going to do this. And I believe, I haven't looked because I'm not the smartest man on planet Earth, but I think his rights or contract with the Hurricanes expires this year. So if he doesn't get a contract offer, he's done. Personally, I don't see it happening. I think he's going to be one of those European all-stars, and maybe another team picks him up, gives him a shot. I personally don't see it, but I do like the player. He's very offensive heavy. I've called him the Finnish Tony DeAngelo a few times now because that's what his play style reminds me of. And in that Tampa preseason game, the first one, he gave up a grade A chance and then immediately took the puck coast to coast and scored. And it's kind of like, wow, have you ever seen a player do that? And then your brain goes, oh yeah, that guy. And so I think the player can be an NHL player. Maybe he just has to be in the right situation. And I don't think it'll happen in the Canes uniform.
Is it his style of play that you comparing him to, TDA, is it his style of play, or is it of the fact that we're kind of in a logjam? I mean, there's a lot of prospects and players who are going to have a hard time cracking this lineup just because the lineup is deep. I mean, it just really is. And I'm thinking of guys like Suzuki, that poor kid. I mean, honestly, trying to break through the lineup, throw the injuries in there, and then the fact that the team is so deep, there just might not be a spot for him to get in. Is Honka in that kind of situation as well?
I think it's a good mix of both. I think on the one hand, yeah, he's kind of getting pushed out by a lot of these right-hand prospects that are coming up, especially the big two being Morrow and Legault. Those two are probably going to get top 4 minutes, maybe top 6 in Chicago, and at least Morrow is going to take a power play spot. You're not going to take that away from him. He's just that good. So obviously at that point, you're probably going to be bottom pairing. You're not going to play on a power play. It's kind of just an unfortunate situation. And the play style doesn't help because, again, one of the big aspects of playing defense is you have to be good in your own zone. And unfortunately for him, he's just never gotten fully good at doing that. So I think it's a good mix of both. Mainly, I'd put it on depth reasons, though. Teams just
And just to throw it out there, Ray, the Canes are not afraid to go after smaller guys, which is totally fine. But I think they had him listed in training camp at 171 pounds.
Ooh.
And 5'11", so he's not tiny, but like 171 is not a big defenseman. So you're not, not that we necessarily are a super physical team, but like, 171 going up against, a 210-pound power forward you're giving up. I mean, that's middleweight versus heavyweight right there, right?
Yeah, no question.
So, yeah, and I can guarantee you. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just going to say I can fully guarantee you. The Hurricanes were very gracious in letting me get credentials from most of the preseason, so I attend a lot of the practice. I can guarantee you that kid was 170 soaking wet.
Right. Yeah, that's the old adage, right? If he's listed at 5'11", 173, he's probably 5'9.5" and like 155 on a good day. Like 171 in pads after a workout, right? With 8 pounds of sweat. Ray mentioned Ryan Suzuki. So Ryan Suzuki, this is a kid who loved on the Wolves, right? He was injured the year of the Calderon, as I recall. Eye injury kind of early in his career. And has never seemed to recover from that in terms of not necessarily playing, but just like his stock dropped a little bit, like what's going to happen. He spent last year in Springfield, which was a Hurricanes Wolves issue because we didn't have an affiliate, right? So he gets tucked into Springfield, but we're not their affiliate. They took him because he's a good player, but they're not going to give him priority ice time over their guys. So he ends up with 30 points in 51 games, which isn't terrible, but he's not getting the look that I think he really deserved there. And even this year in camp, I feel like the kid is just snake bit. I really feel like he's just never going to play a pro game for the Canes. And I really, when they put him on waivers this time, I'm like, somebody's got to take a flyer on this kid. Like in my opinion, he deserves an opportunity somewhere to try and prove that that he can do it. But like Honka, I think at this point, his window is, I wouldn't say entirely closed with the Canes, but it's very, very close to closing because now we've now we've drafted guys like Blake and Nadeau. Okay, so where does Suzuki fit in now? And are you feeling something similar about, poor Ryan.
Yeah, obviously so draft year, he was very good draft year. Obviously, he was a first round pick. And then second, his +1 year, he gets an eye injury that completely limits him. And obviously that's going to stunt any player's development because you got to play to grow. If you don't play, you can't grow. So I will give Springfield credit though, and I will also give Ryan a lot of credit here, is that he started their season, I think on like the 4th line. And then by the end of the year, he was playing consistently. He was their second line center. He was also getting power play time and he was killing penalties. So I will give him credit for working all the way up through the lineup, and I'll give Springfield credit for keeping him there. I guess the thing is, I liked his game in the preseason as well. And I can say that a few of the other people that I spoke with that were there, Corey Lavalette and Ryan Henkel, they were also pretty impressed. He looked like he was playing a very mature game. He looked like he belonged. I was honestly also shocked that he got through waivers. Columbus, before they signed LeBanc, I was kind of like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Waddell drafted him. They have a need for a forward. That makes sense to me. And then they signed LeBanc, and I was like, oh, well, never mind. I think the kid can be an NHL player. I'm not 100% sure if it happens in a Hurricanes uniform, and that's solely because of depth. But at that same point, the Hurricanes have like next to little in the center prospect category. So they might, I hope they keep him around. I think if he stays in Chicago this year, I think he's going to have a heck of a year. He'll probably get second line role again because obviously now Tyson Yost is there. But I think the kid has talent. I think he can be an NHL player. I'm just not 100% sure it happens with the Canes anymore.
Yeah. Once again, I would just like to see him get a shot because I thought he looked good from the little bit I saw of him. And I know the kid works hard. It's a little bit, it kind of reminds me like Willie O'Ree, right? Willie O'Ree being famous in his own right, but having an eye issue, if you ever read his book, he comes out, he's like, I wasn't telling anybody because that was the end of my career. The fact that Ryan got that eye injury and is still able to put up and people are still trying, he's having the opportunity, right? Going to the Wolves is not a slight by any means.
No.
They are absolutely stacked this year. This could be from, a Calder run to just whatever you want to call last year. This could be another legit, contending team. And Suzuki's just one of those kids I'm pulling for. I really hope that whether it's in Carolina or somewhere else, he catches on because I think the kid has what it takes and he just needs to be given a shot.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing about I think both Chicago and the Hurricanes kind of realize, Chicago completely independent. The AHL rules limit a lot of what you can do if you're an independent team, if you don't have prospects that can play. And I think they realize that really quickly they need more talent on that roster compared to just getting ECHL guys and kind of plugging them all over the lineup. So that's why year over year, they're probably going to be like a pretty good playoff team. And obviously with the higher end talent they're going to have this year, obviously you're going to have Spencer Martin in net with Peretz and Kazayev kind of doing the backups. You're going to have a much more loaded defense and you're going to have a much more loaded forward group. So they're going to be really good this year. I'd almost call them, if you watch the AHL in any regard, they're almost appointment television because they're going to be very fun to watch.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. It's, the going independent without a club thing last year was an interesting theory. Totally get why they did it. And we've talked a million times, like this is a two-way street. I think both the Wolves and Levin and Tom Dundon need to, let's get back to hockey. Like, let's make this work. So the fact that Hurricanes control hockey ops now, I think is good for the development of the players. because the Hurricanes can kind of do what they want to do. But, the reality is that Wolves fans are going to get, I think, a really solid team, as good a team as we've seen them have probably in several years. And that includes them winning the Calder Cup just a couple years ago. So on that team and on even this team, Jamieson Rees. Jamieson is another guy I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, so last year, I think the Canes still control his rights. Am I right about that?
No, they last
way
year
off.
they traded last year at
Okay.
the I want to say at the AHL deadline instead of the NHL deadline, they traded his rights to Ottawa for future considerations. I will gladly expand upon Jamieson Rees though.
Yes.
He was another one of those guys that you kind of watch and were like, he could probably be an NHL player. He was one of those, he's like a bottom six guy that you never ever want to play against because he will just piss you off in so many different ways. He was just energy. He was forecheck. He'll hit you. He'll do stuff after the whistle. He was very physical for being sub 6 foot, which I will always give players credit for. And I think with Rees, it was that whole AHL situation from last year. Not only did it piss me off because I had to go find 13 different players in 17 different leagues, which was obviously I'm not the main demographic there for that, but they were scattered across the continental United States as well as the globe. So with Rees, it was another situation of he was loaned to Springfield with Suzuki. He didn't get the same luck that Suzuki had. He still played in a fair few games, but it just never clicked there. The Canes kind of realized, can we wait until next year? Probably not. So they traded him to Ottawa, where he did okay for Belleville. And honestly, I don't know where he is now, but that kid probably could play NHL games in the future down the line. Just I do miss the kid a lot though.
Yeah, and thanks for correcting me because I kept seeing him in my head in Springfield, and then I'm like, well, they missed the playoffs, but like, why? Wait, he wasn't here, and so I'm old.
Yeah.
It's fine.
No, it was an AHL deadline. I remember being confused by it because I think I saw it like after the NHL trade deadline. I saw it happen, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. But then I remembered quickly for the AHL trade deadline, it's just they can't play in the NHL playoffs. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah.
Makes a little more sense, right? This is one that this is a kid who is fairly big. He's listed at 6'2" and like 180 something. I feel like he actually really is about that, but Noel Gunler. So right wing, which we've had need of, and I mean, we're pretty well stacked, but we need a few guys to step up. But Noel Gunler's one of those guys who's on my radar. He's not like a top prospect in my mind, but he is somebody who I feel like has potential. What do you think about Noel? Maybe I'm way off base.
So how do I last year he obviously was going to play for an AHL team and see how well that worked out. I don't remember if it was him or Honka that I think it was Honka that he was rumored to not want to go to the ECHL team. And Canes obviously were like, all right, we're not going to deal with it. So they sent Gunler to Karpat to play with former Canes prospect Ville Koivunen. And he played, I think, in like the first 20-ish games. He got hurt. I think I could be wrong, but I did not see a single bit of information. But I think he got hurt. That's what I heard. And he was supposed to be traded. It never happened. Traded in the Liga, not here.
Right. Yeah, not away from the Canes, but yeah, within the Finnish league.
Yeah, make that. He was supposed to go to Malmo, and that trade just never materialized. Nothing happened. They didn't release him. Now I'm realizing that they play in two different leagues. So Karpat never released him, and he never played another game for them. So it was just a really unfortunate situation for him. To describe it, I would say watch if you've seen Gleb in any sort of preseason action. Just Gunler is basically the Finnish version of Gleb. Offensively, he is very talented. His shot is really, really something. It's very good asset. His skating is okay. Offensively, he's very good. Defensively, it's yikes. But he'll get good time with the Wolves this year. I'm not 100% sure about his outlook as well. It's one of those things where I think he can be an NHL player. With the Hurricanes, I'm not 100% sure.
Right. And go ahead, Ray.
I was just going to say, what in hearing you break down all these players and so forth, what it comes immediately to mind for me, Nick, is how difficult it is to keep track of where these players are in their development. It's putting a really fine point on how difficult the job is in preparing and managing the assets that you have to get them ready to make the pros. And there's hundreds of reasons why it's so hard to make the NHL. And we're getting a list of virtually all of them here with you, Nick, and just the few ones that you've had. It is so hard to keep control of it. So I got to tip the cap to you, because the fact that you're on it and you can, you're displaying, in your knowledge, you're displaying how difficult the job is. And I just had to get that out there, because my goodness, where these players end up and what happens to them in the journey to get to the pros, difficult.
Yeah, it takes a lot of for me anyways, because I took it over from Matt Soma, who had it before me. He's helped me a lot with this, because obviously I'm still learning it. I'm not saying I'm great at this. The last draft was my first one running that account, but I'm getting used to it now, and it's becoming a little easier nowadays that I've gotten into it. I do work with Dobber prospects, which makes me really focus on it all, and with Canes prospects and everything regarding that, it's gotten a little bit easier. I also do have a spreadsheet with most of the information listed down, because there's so much. They play in so many different countries, and it makes everything a little bit more confusing. If I ever wake up in the morning and I'll look at my phone, there will be about 200 notifications in a language that is not English that I'll have to try and sift through.
Well, the fact that you say you need a spreadsheet is probably the reason why Brad and I are not the place to come when you need to hear about prospects. I can speak for myself. I can barely read a regular book, never mind a whole spreadsheet that's got all the breakdowns and information that you need at your fingertips. So you're impressing the hell out of me right now. Let me tell you, like I'm loving this, and I know where we're getting good information, you know what I mean, about the future. And I mean, as fans, I can tell you, Brad and I love looking into the now, and there's the security of the now. But again, these players coming along, that's an even better feeling, and it's better to have knowledge on that as well. You know what I mean? Because then you can look ahead and the path is kind of set. So we talked about Gunler, Artamonov. Is that how you say it?
Artamonov.
Russian, right?
So the Russian names will trip everybody up. Don't worry.
Real quick one for most of the time, from my understanding of a friend who was born in Russia and then moved to the United States. Most Russian last names, harder syllable in the middle, right? Yep. So Artamonov.
I took 2 years of Russian in high school, and I'm currently relearning all of that and trying to get better at it, because my phone, again, Russians don't have Twitter, as I've come to find out, thanks to a Hurricanes prospect who was here at Dev Camp, who I was showing him stuff, and he was like, "Oh, that's Twitter. We don't have that." And I was like, "Oh, that's fun."
Look at that.
He explained to me that it's really only Telegram and Instagram for them. So my phone in the morning is about 200 Russian Telegram notifications, which is an incredibly fun thing to try and look through.
Do they stay with carrier pigeon too?
They might. I'm not 100% sure. They've
Sorry, that was uncalled for. I shouldn't have gone that way.
It's definitely a learning curve. But the Russians obviously are incredibly fun, but also create some funny names to try and pronounce. So Artamonov is just art. It's just kind of separated. It's just Artamonov. It's not horrendous, but there's also some other ones in the system that, oh man.
No question.
And Ugg from Twitter, you mentioned Twitter, who is like, Linnea, who like will give us like pronunciation videos, which is great. Yeah. But she put together one where, they all have nicknames, right? So it's not just Svechnikov. It's also, is it Sasha for him? Or I forget
For
which one
Andre,
goes
it's something different.
which.
For Russian players, as I know, Alexander is Sasha. So any player named Alexander
There we go.
would have the nickname Sasha. As I'm coming to find out, there's a few other ones that they use just based on other stuff. Hurricanes drafted a prospect, Fyodor Avramov, that plays for Sochi. His nickname is Uncle. He's like 18 years old, but they call him Uncle because in Russia there was a very popular kids cartoon called Uncle Fyodor, and all of his teammates just call him Uncle, and I thought that was really funny. And then Stanislav Yarovoy, another Russian prospect, they call him Musketeer. I couldn't find anything about that one, but I saw the official team account call him Musketeer. I was like, all right, sure. That's
like Zach from the Search Cast was Grandpa.
Yeah.
He'll like
you're going to throw that one in.
If he hears that, he'll like that.
Yeah.
So
kind of.
Artemonov has been, so first of all, he falls to the second round, third round. The Hurricanes pick him up. Yeah. So the Hurricanes pick him up. Some scouting reports I read, because a lot of times I see a player, I don't know anything about them the way you do, but then somebody's like, oh, you drafted this guy. I go, okay, well, what can I find out about him? And a lot of people seem to be like, oh, we're very high on this guy. Don't know how he fell that low. What a steal. This should work out. And I think he has 16 points in 14 games right now in the KHL. And it's just on fire to the point of like, I think the excitement is starting to build. It's not to the like Nikishin level yet, but like people are starting to be like, oh my gosh, is this for real? Is this like is he a one and done? Like, what's the deal with Nikita? Because I mean, he is lighting it up right now.
So obviously, I did 3 profiles before the draft. I did Michael Haig, who went before the Canes even picked. I did Charlie Ellick, who was a second round pick. He's fine. And then I did Artemonov because everything about him just kind of built into a Hurricanes player. I view him as a Michael Bunting that has gotten more finishing ability. His 200-foot game is something very impressive. His motor is another just unbelievable asset that he has. His timing and his hockey IQ that I've seen has been awesome. Obviously, this year, the big difference between this year and last year is that the puck is going in the back of the net more often than not. He currently has a 38.6% shooting percentage. I'm not going to say that's unsustainable, but that is genuinely one of the highest numbers I have ever seen in a senior league. He's awesome. I think he's another one of those players that you're like, how did you get him? And I personally believe the Russian factor, which some people might disagree with, it exists. I think I've had enough of it. It does exist to a certain extent. He's going to be one of those players that falls in that category. His contract runs out in 2025, 2026. I am not 100% sure if he will come over. Torpedo, from what I know, is actually kind of relaxed with how they do things. They're very good with letting players do what they want. Obviously, their head coach, Igor Larionov, former NHL player, incredible guy when it comes to development. So I'm interested to see that, but obviously the start this year has been awesome to see. He's tearing it up, and I'm not going to mention anything about U20 or U21 scoring because the guy in second place, there's a lot of people that will get mad if you mention his name because he doesn't get ice time. But his head coach is I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, so I'm not going to say that, but
we try not to. We try and keep it family friendly.
But yeah, his head coach is not the smartest guy on planet Earth. Obviously, we'll probably get into it in a little bit because there's one prospect everybody likes to talk about, but Artemonov is awesome. He's quickly rising up the ranks, and especially with Jackson Blake probably graduating this year out of the prospect rank, I think it's very easy to just slide him right into that top 5 and you'll be perfectly fine. Artemonov's a guy.
That would be amazing. So there was a time the Hurricanes included would not draft Russians because you just didn't know if you could get them over, right? Mm-hmm. And that seems to have kind of gone by the wayside. I think the Hurricanes have no problem drafting Russian players. Mm-hmm. It doesn't appear thus far that we've had any trouble getting them over here, but could that be part of the reason maybe why he slid some? I mean, do teams, you may know better than us, like do teams still have that fear of what if he doesn't sign? Like what if he stays?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I don't know. I'm not going to say I have any information on that. I do fully believe, though, that there are teams that are still nervous about drafting Russians because they're nervous about development time. And there's an example from last year, Stanislav Yarovoy, who I don't know if a story leaked or something, but it was rumored he was going to terminate his contract, come over early. And when that news came out, he went from a KHL regular to playing in all three junior leagues in 1 year. And I don't know about that. I'm not going to say anything, but I do think there is still a preconceived notion that Russian players are going to be very difficult to get over. The language barrier is obviously going to be a thing, but the Hurricanes have done a very good job of this. I fully credit it to Tulsky and York, Darren York, being a lot more open, and they trust their scouts a lot more from what I've seen anyways. I met Tulsky once. Nice guy, knows what I do, which was very scary to hear. So
is that like meeting like you're like being a math guy and you meet like a math wizard and like, oh my gosh, like Einstein is like maybe critiquing me right now. Oh my god.
For that, it was like that, and then meeting Darren York, who handles the draft. I was like, oh god. So you definitely, yeah. They trust their scouts a lot, and they very much so should. And mainly, I think it's because they hired a Russian scout to actually go in that region and be there and give good updates. Oleg Smirnov, very incredibly nice person, very helpful with a lot of things. And obviously, they've listened to him recently, ever since he was hired. I don't remember when it was. I want to say 21 or 19, one of those years. But you look at their Russian draft record. Now, some of them have not panned out. There's a hefty, maybe not hefty some, but there's definitely a few names in there that haven't worked out. One of them, Igor Naumov, is solely because he had a gnarly injury and missed 2 years of hockey. So I just wish the kid would play. But a lot of them are starting to show some interesting results. Obviously, Artemonov is the very recent example. Obviously, Nikishin, everybody's seen that. Ponomarov, before he got traded, was a very promising prospect. Kochetkov has obviously taken a lot of steps toward what he was. And there's going to be a few more from that same era of when they start trusting Russia again. You're going to see a lot more of those guys slowly filter in over time.
I wonder if the file on Piotr from the scouts highlighted the fact that he was willing to chuck knuckles whenever needed, and throw down and demand that the opposition not touch his guys.
There's there's a little funny anecdote that I got from a development camp when I was there. The Russian goalies, it was a Velmakin, even though I think he's changing to Belarus instead of Russia, but him and Kazayev, they were both there. And Velmakin was very adamant that when you're in Russia as a goalie, you learn how to fight. You're going to know how to do it in any regard. And obviously with Piotr, he seems to have instilled some of that within the younger guys, seeing as both of them are very willing to offer that up. No, I mean, I guess so.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me. You mentioned the scouts, and here's the one thing that kind of sticks in my head a little bit, and it relates a little bit to Ted Lasso, the show and stuff. Nate, who was disappointed that he's coming up with great information and the great ideas and stuff, but it was Ted and Beard getting all the shine and stuff like that. And that's kind of the life of scouts, isn't it? I mean, a front office can look magnificent as they compile these great lineups and we're totally stacked and stuff. And who's responsible for that? It's guys like, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the fellow's name, but I mean, he's the guy out there doing the legwork and finding the guys. And yeah, sometimes they come through, sometimes they don't, but you can't argue the Russians that have been added to this franchise. I mean, they're paying off.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So far, they're definitely doing it. And obviously, next year is going to be everybody's favorite year of all time, mine included. I can finally get a gigantic monkey off my back in regards to a question that I get asked.
Say the line, Nick. Say it. When can we see Nikishin?
The official KHL contract ends May 31st, 2025. I don't expect him to play this season. Next year, though, 100%.
Here you go. Well, I mean, first of
go.
all, the fact that he couldn't play until then, I mean, unless he could get released magically, brought to our lineup, the D's in great shape right now.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you throw him in that lineup, and who do you take out? That's the other thing. Like, where do you put him in this lineup? It's,
honestly, if he came over tomorrow, Ray, I'd put him right on the top pair.
Hey, man.
I would say Burns, I love you, but
where does everyone else go?
Sit tonight out and let's see what the kid can do.
The thing I will give Eric Tulsky a ton of credit for. He is very good so far. Obviously, it's a very small sample size. He has lined up contracts very, very well. Orlov is going to be the big example because 2-year contract last year. He was okay in my eyes. Obviously, I might be a little bit different than everybody.
He got better as the season went on, for sure.
Yeah.
Better.
So
couldn't have gotten worse.
So obviously, you got him. He signed until the end of this year. Man, we're going to lose this left-handed Russian defenseman. Oh, what's this? A 23-year-old left-handed Russian defenseman who's been probably the best defenseman the KHL has seen within the past 5 years. Oh, man, that's sick.
Yeah.
And then the Burns contract, they're going to get kind of lucky on. I said it today because I fully believe that their plan is let Orlov and Burns expire and just have obviously Nikishin replacing Orlov. And then I think Scott Morrow is going to replace Burns in very slight regards. I don't think fully, but Scott Morrow offensively will replace Burns there. And I think you're going to get that. Let me just dive on Nikishin just ever so slightly, just to really get out of the way. It's
why people probably are tuning into this one.
He is about, I guess just shout out the SKA development staff, whatever they did. Whenever he was playing with Spartak, he was a net front defenseman, which about made me throw some. But as soon as he gets traded to Spartak in a 9-piece deal, there were 9 pieces of that trade to get Nikishin to SKA. He has turned into genuinely the best defenseman the KHL has seen in probably the last 5 years. And it helps that he is 23 years old and he just turned 23. He has 2 of the top 3 scoring seasons by defensemen in KHL history. And he did that at 21 and 22. He runs their top power play. Unfortunately, but he does run their top power play with help from D'Angelo now, but he does run it. And he does kill penalties. He's played 25 minutes a night in almost every game this year. I think he's only missed like 3 at this point. He's a workhorse defenseman. And I think it's going to, obviously, I've said if Slavin's not here, eventually he's going to be your best defenseman. He is just unbelievable. I think I lucked out realistically. I get to talk about Nikishin as like their big top prospect. I could be, somebody like Pittsburgh, who maybe Pittsburgh, who I don't even know the other teams just stuck in purgatory. But Nikishin arguably is the best prospect that is not playing in North America or the NHL right now. He is so unbelievable, and I wish more people got to watch him. But obviously, after May 31st, 2025, or when SKA go out of the playoffs, you'll probably get to see him a lot more.
And what I really liked is in that All-Star game that they had, they were showing the clips and stuff. All of the Hurricanes, the Russian Hurricanes, gathering around him, and I'm like, yes, that's what you want to do. Like, prop him up, make him feel good, welcome him to the team before he's there, tell him about how great it is to be in Raleigh, and that the tailgating is fantastic, and the barbecue is fantastic, and that everything is great about going to Raleigh. And Brad, I know I cut you off, but why can't we have Nikki? Like, let's get him over here. Let's raise some money. They can't be. If
it was purely money, I think Tom would have paid it. But I think
unbelievable.
Nick hit it on the head.
There was a few stories last year. I don't know if they're true or not. There were a few stories last year that Waddell and Dundon pushed very hard to buy out the rest of his contract, or help buy out, because there's no. Let's make that abundantly clear. As we're talking, NHL compliance office, if you are ever listening to this, You cannot team cannot help a KHL player buy out their contract. It has to be the KHL player. There was a lot of.
I mean, what do they think we are? Tampa Bay? Come on now.
Yeah, so it's it's one of those things where they tried real hard last year, and apparently it obviously didn't happen. And I want to say they probably tried again real hard before this season started. Obviously, Waddell said those comments, and what was really funny is Nikishin did an interview like a week later after that, and somebody asked him like, what the GM said that you might be heading over to North America, and his first comment was, "Well, didn't you get fired a week later?" And I about busted out laughing here, and I was like, "Well, he didn't get fired, but I do understand the sentiment."
Yeah,
but, yeah, his agent has made it clear that Nikishin wants to try the NHL, and this is a guy that I don't want to put a lot of like higher expectations on him. Obviously, I've already said if Slavin wasn't here, he'd be more defensive. But this is a guy that if he gets power play one time and he does what he is doing in the KHL, this is a guy that probably could contend for the Norris at some point in his career.
Impressive.
I think of it in terms of like, if you see like Moneyball, if you're a baseball person, or Ray is, they're talking about like a 5-tool guy, right? Hit, run, throw, catch. Fifth thing, I don't watch baseball.
Yeah.
Nikishin is the hockey equivalent of that, right? He's got a motor. He can hit people. He's also dodgy. Like he can go around you. Like he can McDavid you something. He's got a killer slap shot. He's got a great wrist shot. He is the most unafraid player I maybe have seen in decades. Like it's like if you programmed a robot and said, these are your tasks, like he just does them and he makes it look effortless. And that's what I like about him is, he has no fear about whatever it is he's doing. He's just going to go out there and just do it as good as he can. And like you said, he's playing 25 minutes a night. He's not sweating any harder than anybody else. I mean, he's making it look easy. So I can't wait to see the kid, because one of the nice things that we have here in Carolina is we do have Svechnikov, we do have Orlov, we do have Kochetkov. And I think for those Russian players, Artemonov, Nikishin, they can see that and go, I can go to Carolina and I'm away from home, but I'm not being dropped into, I'm going to pick on Anaheim because they're not around, or Anaheim. I'm going to pick on Arizona, right? I'm not being dropped in the middle of the desert. And I don't know anybody, and I don't know English, and nobody knows Russian, and we don't have an interpreter, and this is hard. You're going to be dropped into a situation where, you're going to need to learn some English, but you're going to be surrounded by guys who are going to make it feel like home. And I think that's a huge, huge boon to getting these guys out of the KHL and onto NHL ice.
So I was going to say real quick. I had read, unfortunately, but I read Russian publications from time to time, trying to keep information straight. That is actually one of the things Nikishin had mentioned in an interview, was that he was really happy that there were some other Russian players on that team that he was going to be able to have conversations with and everything like that. And that's another thing the Hurricanes have gotten a lot better at, is drafting all these Russians, some of them coming over. That Russian teams notice that. That's something that it has been published. Russian teams notice that the Canes take a lot of Russian players, and it seems as if, I'm not saying it for truth or anything, it seems as if the Canes have a nice little rapport going with some of these Russian teams, and it makes everything a little easier to go with. And I think Dan Milstein, that man has I wouldn't say a monopoly, but he has a lot of Russian contracts and he handles a lot of people like that. And it seems like they have a nice little relationship with him. Obviously, they got Gleb paid and brought over. So, that's a really big thing, doing that. And obviously, it's going to help a lot when he does come over May 31st, 2025, or when SKA get eliminated from the playoffs.
And perfect segue. So the next name on my list, and we'll kind of go faster because these are the guys that are in North America. We know more about them because we've at least gotten to see them a little bit with our own eyes. Most of us who don't have a chance to watch, YouTube KHL, right? Gleb, what a great name, right? But Trikazov looks to be like, he didn't come out of nowhere, but in some ways I feel like he was kind of like in the background. And then this year they were like, oh wait, we have something special here. You know,
So,
6'1", 185 pounds, right-hand shot, winger. And his name is Gleb. I mean, I want a jersey, and I'm going to put Gleb on the back if I get it, not Jacozo.
you have to include the exclamation point at the end, so it's Gleb with the exclamation point.
Perfect. So, real super quick on Gleb. Like, what are your thoughts here?
I love the player offensively. I don't know if it was stupid or smart, but I think at his peak, I think Gleb could be a version of Tarasenko. I'm not as at his peak. If Gleb could ever get to a peak in the NHL, he would look like that. His offensively, his playmaking is very good, and mainly his shot. People were clowning on his shot in his draft year, but no, that's a very powerful shot, and he just understands the right place and the right time. And I think Russian players just understand that from a certain standpoint. They go from playing on these big Russian ice, European, to playing on a little bit more narrow North American ice, and it makes it maybe not easier, but in regards to timing, you can play a little bit faster, which they're not used to, and sometimes that obviously pays off. With Gleb, he'll get, I would say, top 6 time. Maybe I think in Chicago he'll get very good time. He'll be on the power play. I love the kid. He's obviously the image of just Gleb with an exclamation point in red letters has done numbers. But getting him to North America was awesome. And his development's going to hinge on how he does this year. I think have a good year and we'll see what we got from there. His Russian teammates loved him. Let me make that. In Russia, he had the talent to play for the KHL team, but from what I've read, I'm going to make that abundantly clear. From what I've read, he and his coach at Avangard, where he played, did not see eye to eye on a few things. So they decided, hey, we're going to send you down to the VHL and the MHL, which are the second and third leagues of Russian hockey. And when I think it was the VHL playoffs he played the most in, but he played there and he was the captain of the team and he led them on a decently deep run while also producing at a very solid rate. So his teammates love him. Obviously, when I spoke to him, it was like a 3-minute, or maybe not even 3 minutes. It may have been like 30 seconds. It was myself and Ryan Henkel. We walked into the locker room, wanted to say hi to Gleb because obviously he has a little bit of buzz because it's one of those things, Gleb. The name, the Gleb. Yeah. So we, just spoke to him a little bit. He's happy to be here. He loves North Carolina so far with what he's been introduced with. And Chicago's probably going to be a little bit better. Like kind of feels a little bit closer to home, cold, snowy sometimes, he is something to watch because I think if he has a good year in Chicago, which by all factors he should, with Cam Abbott coaching that team, they're going to focus heavy on development. I like Gleb's chances of being an NHL player maybe 2-3 years down the line. It's just going to be a question of when.
Love it. So for the other guys, right? So these are all going to be Wolves guys. Instead of going through each of them, just because this would be a 2-hour podcast, which would be awesome, but that gives us a reason to have you on later on. Of the Nadeau, Felix Ungersorum, Himosalmi, Scott Morrow, Charles Alexis Go, Jackson Blake, of the guys who are left, we haven't really talked. Do you want to pick one or two? It doesn't even have to be like your favorites or anything, but maybe something, pick a couple that maybe people should know a little more or don't know something about somebody. Then you're like, oh, what people may not know is this. You want to maybe give us a couple of those from the remaining crew?
So we're doing North America, right? No, I can't. Like
you can pick any Canes prospect. If there's a Canes prospect that we haven't talked about, and you're like, hey, you should look out for this dude in 2 or 3 years, I'm all in.
Okay. I'm going to try and do this as quick as possible because I have a few I need to go over. I feel as if I need to go over. Okay. Bradley Nadeau, one of the nicest nicest players I've ever talked to. Unbelievable shot. Everybody knows his shot is one of the greatest assets of his game. It's incredibly lethal. It's very good. I thought throughout the offseason, I was the one who said, I think he's going to make the team. I thought second line left wing was kind of tailor-made for a guy when they needed offense. Obviously, that didn't end up being the case. I think he's going to do very well in Chicago. I think he's going to be a point man for their power play. He's going to do a lot of good 5-on-5. I think there's going to be a lot of good things with him. Jackson Blake, he obviously made the team. He was probably the most NHL ready out of all of them. He was very good. Obviously, he'll make his debut tomorrow. Happy about it, or Friday.
And just real quick, so and they can still play him 9 games, I think, and then still send him down. Is that still an effect, or am I way off base?
I had that written down, and I got a fun little text message from Adam Gold, and I was like, oh, let me double check myself, and I looked. It's under 20 years old, and he is 21, I think. So he does not fit in that role. He's already obviously with all that. He's gonna be good. He's gonna get power play time. Unfortunately, fourth line, whatever. He'll get power play time. It'll make up for it. He's gonna be fun. Felix Unger-Storm, I think, would have made the team if they weren't serious about putting him at center. And with him getting sent down, they seem to be very serious about trying him at center and getting him playing there. He looked good, obviously. That game against Nashville, he looked unbelievable. And so giving him a full season of development with Cam Abbott, who is a very good developmental coach, it'll be good for him. Charles Alexis Legault, I had somebody tell me, it was not anybody, it was a fan, but it was, if you've ever wanted to have a person tailor-made in a lab to just be a Brett Pesce regen, you have created Charles Alexis Legault. He plays very similar. He plays a very strong two-way game, and obviously he's physical, as we have seen.
He's a big boy.
They have him listed as something different. He is 6'4" and all of 210. I don't want to hear any lies.
They have him at 6'3" and like 204, 205, I think.
That's pretty close. That is pretty good with what I would say. He is incredibly physical. His two-way game's good. He was killing penalties all preseason. He looked good killing penalties, which is probably the best thing.
He bleeds very well.
Hey man,
that jersey, the splatter pattern. Whoever gets that jersey has a really nice.
I'll give him credit for standing on his feet. He stood in the pocket and he threw with a very known enforcer in the NHL. So I'll give him credit.
Mm-hmm.
Third goalie, first starter, third something in Chicago. Ruslan Kazayev, the very young but very tall Russian. He is very raw. And I need people to realize that, because I might have been hyping him up a little too much, which I have been showing an incredible knack for. But Kazayev's very raw, and he needs this development desperately. And when Chicago, he should get very good development. He'll learn behind a guy who's played NHL games, and he'll probably split time with Yaniv Peretz. He'll get incredible learning this year. I'm very interested to see how many games he does play. Obviously, people like him because he's 6'4" and he has a very fun little bubbly personality. He's going to be a decent goalie in my eyes. He just has to have the right little development path. Timur Cole in Russia playing for SKA 1946. I am kind of shocked he fell to where he was. He's another one of those Russian players that kind of fell. He is 6'4", about 200 pounds, and he's a left-handed defenseman that plays from the SKA system. Ain't that a coincidence, huh?
Wow, it feels like when the next round of contracts are up, that might be a good...
It'd be a fun little tidbit. He is a very interesting player because, one, he started the season with SKA and played in, I think, 3 or 4 games before being sent back down. He didn't look out of place in those games that he played. I was intrigued to see that and happy to see it. And now with SKA, just today, he had a power play goal on a slap shot, and he had a very solid primary assist. He's another interesting player that I think probably gets a lot more love next year when SKA kind of has to reinvent their defense and kind of rebuild it. I'm trying to do this fast. There's a few other really, really quick. Vlad Grudinin grew into a top pairing defenseman for Severstal in the KHL. Very interested to see he starts their penalty kill. He's interesting. I think there might be something there. Roman Chakrin, 6'5" defenseman who his team sometimes uses as a forward, which is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. But he is a lot more skilled than I kind of realized. But he's another guy that I'm interested in. I'm kind of upset that something didn't happen with him this off season, but stuff happens. His contract was removed from the NHL website for like a month, and then his contract was put back up on the NHL website, and he extended for another 3 years. And you're like, what was going on there? I couldn't tell you, but it's that's some. And then lastly, Oscar Voulay for Skellefteå. Another situation where he goes to the 13th forward and he decides to become really good at hockey. He played one game as the 13th forward for Skellefteå, scored a hat trick in like 9 minutes, and then now he's playing regular minutes on like I think their third line, and he scored another goal recently. But he's another player that I'm very interested in because like my big thing with him was like, can you go to the middle of the ice? And he has shown a lot more willingness since going back to Sweden of going to the middle of the ice. So I'm very intrigued there, and I believe that's everybody. Yeah, probably.
Oh man.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I mean, I'm always impressed by
is.
people. I mean, I follow the Hurricanes, the Wolves. I follow the Boston Fleet now that they have a name, and I keep up with the league, but not in depth. Right, I just don't have the time, and I'm always impressed when I find people who follow not just the NHL but other leagues, especially foreign leagues like you do. It's really something to see, Nick, because that is a lot of information. You mentioned a lot of the sources are not in English. You're having to, it's not like that information falls in your lap. I mean, we get kind of used sometimes to, I can just pop open the Athletic. I can, North State Journal, right? Corey Lav,
Yep.
who writes for those places, Ryan Henkel, Hockey News, and just be like, like there's the information. And then you can expand. And what you are doing is different than that because you are that information, right? You're gathering those sources. You're having to reach out and find those things, and just super, super cool.
It's definitely a challenge. I can confidently say that. Trying to obviously, I'm still shaky with Russian. Even then, it's still not great. Learning, I'm not even trying to learn Swedish. Good luck, brother. I mean, I keep up with it as much as I can. And then now with their one guy who plays in Canada, and it's a French Canadian team.
I can help you with the French,
French
if I can read it. I can't help you with interviews. I can help you with written stories.
Yeah, man.
My 825-day Duolingo streak, I can put to good use.
I'm on
if you need an article
translated.
So. Real quick, so we're gonna give you a chance to. We're gonna wrap up in a minute. I want to play a new game that I thought of while basically I was getting ready for tonight. For you and Ray.
Okay.
So I'm putting you both on the spot. Ray's kind of giving me a what? Like, what do I got to do? I'm gonna ask 5 questions. I'm gonna call it 5 questions because I'm gonna ask you 5 questions. And I just want to snap judgment, like 1 or 2 word answer. No explaining.
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to make Ray go first. That way I'm nice to our guest.
Okay.
Hurricane starting goalie tomorrow.
Anderson.
Nick? All right. He was the last goalie off the ice in practice, so it makes sense. But
he's been in the starter's crease the past few days, and
I know I really want it to be Kochetkov. I really want it to be Kochetkov's net. First goal scorer for the Hurricanes this year.
Jarvie.
Oh, you stole my answer.
That's fine. You can do Jarvis. It's a great answer. I mean, if I was putting money on it, that's a solid bet, right? Does the power play score tomorrow night?
No.
2 no's. Oh, Hurricane season point total. So last year they finished with like 111, something like that. I mean, it was up there.
Oh, you know what? That was too high. That was a little too high. I'd say 106.
I was gonna go like 100 in like 1 or 102.
Yeah, I'm probably close to where Nick is, and then finally, is that enough? Do they make the playoffs?
Oh yeah.
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 They're a lock.
Oh yeah.
I see a lot of people thinking the Hurricanes are going to miss the playoffs, and I just don't see the Capitals and the Islanders and the Atlantic teams, the Buffaloes and Montreal. I just don't see all of them getting, like one of them might pass the Canes, and the Atlantic's going to get a couple of people in, but I think the Metro send in 3, and I think the Hurricanes, the Devils, and the Rangers are about as close to a lock as you're going to get at this time of year, unless something goes really wrong, right? Whether it's injuries or something else. I mean,
the cream of the crop. And I would just say those that are panicking about missing the playoffs entirely are greatly affected by the emotional ties to the players that we have lost, so much so that they've just disregarded or just don't know the talent that we still do have. I mean, there's a lot of experts out there that are panning us off, and I'm sorry, this roster still has all the tools. still has all the tools.
Yeah,
It's
I think you hit the nail on the head.
The big thing is the Canes core at its core of Aho, Spatch, Jarvis, I guess Slavin, Burns. They're good enough to get you into the playoffs 9 times out of 10, and their supporting cast is good enough. There's no, yeah. You're telling me Ottawa or Montreal or Buffalo after what I just seen? You think any of them are getting in the playoffs? Come on.
No chance.
It's not happening.
Even the Penguins might struggle this year too. After that, my good lord, they look bad.
It looked like an AHL team against an NHL team out there. No offense to the AHL, but just it was a little boys versus men.
Whether you credit that to the Rangers just being really, really good or the Penguins being really bad, I think it's a nice little mix of both. The Penguins are still very old. The Rangers are a very strong team. So
I saw a stat somewhere, and I don't know if this is true or it's just pointing against the Penguins to laugh, but there's only been 3 teams that have lost 6-0 on the opening night, and all 3 of them are Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh last night. It was Pittsburgh in 2002 or something. And then it went way back. It's still Pittsburgh. It was like, it was stunning. I don't know that they're going to be repaired. Washington is a team that I think will be fun to watch in so much as they had a pretty active, off season, and they brought in a lot of, pieces. Will those pieces fit together?
And
it's
for
hard
Washington,
to say.
I think people see last year and they go, Washington was an 8th seed, right? And they're better this year.
Yeah.
But I think all 3 of us can agree, and most people listening can agree, they weren't really the 8th seed. They squeaked into the 8th seed.
No,
they were not a playoff team.
Seed.
They should not have been anywhere near the playoffs.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
No.
So will they be better?
Chicago.
It's just one of those things. I mean, so yeah, the Canes, are they going to slide some? Yeah, that you can't be a 110-point winner every year. It's just not a thing, right? But can they get 100 points? Can they get in the playoffs? I think that's people thinking that they aren't are silly. And like you said, Ray, I think it's tied to emotion. Shea and Pesce, as much as I love them both, were they as good as Orlov Chatfield once that pairing got going last year? They weren't. Yeah. So you in my mind, you lost your third pairing, deep pairing, and you replaced them and upgraded them. It's, I mean, I hate to say it, losing, Jesper Fast to injury, don't like that, losing Nazen, don't like. The good news there is at least I'll stop mispronouncing them name because my brain will stop starting to say it correctly and then go, is that right? And then miscorrect myself. So at least that he has going for him. And it's great. And we're going to miss him, but he's another cog, right? You're not losing Aho. You're not losing Svechnikov. You're not losing Stahl, right? Those guys are back, and the guys that they brought in around them are going to make them better, and they're going to make those guys better as well.
Teams on paper, when you look at them, you can see certain talent and the names carry weight and stuff, but they still have to skate, still got to play the games. Yeah. And just because you have a great, our best team on paper ever was post trade deadline last year. Arguably, it was. And yes, we should have done better. We deserved better, didn't get it. So what's to say that this team is not going to be capable of stepping up and skating through and removing all doubt? And I've got faith in them. And maybe that's Pollyanna for some, but I just know who I saw and who have filled in the gaps, and they aren't anything to sneeze at. We're in good shape. It's going to be a great season, and I can't wait to see it in less than 22 hours and 20 minutes. 22 hours and 20 minutes. I'm getting antsy.
Right.
We got to wrap this up.
Yeah. So Nick, where can people find? I'm assuming most everybody who follows this and listens to us probably already knows you, but if they don't, if they have been living, I don't say in a rock, if they have been without television or internet for the last couple of years, where can they find you at?
I am at Canes Prospects on Twitter, and that's going to be the only place I'm at because my personal account is basically just a wrestling account at this point. We're going to keep it that way.
And you join a wide swath of the Canes community there too, right? I mean, I know there's a lot of pro wrestling, hockey, like IndyCar crossover in our fandom, which is kind of crazy because those are very different sports. But it's
I've come to find that out. Don't get me wrong, but no, I'm at Canes Prospects as where most of the relevant information will be found.
Beautiful.
Well, let me say, knowledge is power, and you're the most friggin' powerful person that I've ever met. Honestly, the updates that you gave on our future there and the players that we have and the clear work that you put in is top shelf, second to none. We really thankful to have you here today, and we certainly hope to have you back. And just so great. Follow this man, you guys.
We will definitely have you back on Nikishin signing day. How about that?
Oh, dude, I might be the busiest person on planet Earth on signing day. I'm not gonna lie. The amount of hype that's gonna get when that's finally announced. I might just drop to my knees and celebrate wherever I am in the state of North Carolina.
You will get tagged on every Nikishin post, I think, on Twitter. I think my phone
might stop working.
You might just want to turn your phone off that day. So.
I hear you.
Awesome.
So, Brad,
how do we do, Ray?
We've covered so much. We've covered so much, and we even got a little taste. There's only one thing left that we have to do before we take on the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow in the Lenovo Arena.
I would make a barbecue joke here, but the Canes Twitter feed said I can't make barbecue jokes in front of Storm.
No barbecue jokes. But what we can say is go Canes.
Go Canes.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks, doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We will do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.